This is not a postcard. This is the real thing. Funny thing about travel, I mean, you can look at a postcard of an image like that, which I did, and say, I have to go there. I mean, how perfect, this exquisite ancient walled city on the Adriatic with that wonderful blue water. I want to see it. I want to be there, which is why I have come to Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik is, of course, a cultural center, and the summer festival is the highlight of this year, and it runs mid-July to mid-August, and it's a fabulous event, as you can see by the opening ceremony. But I like to think that it's just a very warm Croatian welcome. Opening night is a gala affair, full orchestra, president in attendance, girls in tutus, men in tights. And the whole thing centers around a play. There are the usual suspects: the girl with the briefcase, the grand wizard, and Cupid. The plot, such as it is, involves that old chestnut, the power struggle. In this case, the prize is a giant key, presumably to unlock the city. Greed ensues, the key breaks, and surprise, surprise, the wizard manages to fix everything in the end. I think the moral of the story is, if you have a big key, don't wave it about. Or it could be something to do with sharing. Whatever the case, there are plenty of crowd-pleasing fireworks to round off the night. No translation required. Although it's a relatively small country, about a fifth the size of Italy, its neighbor on the other side of the Adriatic, Croatia can boast an inordinate number of islands. There are almost 12,000, which means 5,835 kilometers of spectacular coastline. But my first stop is the ancient walled city of Dubrovnik. These walls were built around the city of Dubrovnik in the 13th century, and the outside walls are huge, like 1.5 meters wide. It is one of the strongest, in addition to being one of the most beautiful forts in the Mediterranean. And the ramparts did their work because, give or take a few payoffs, this place was independent. It was a republic until Napoleon arrived in the 1800s. But for a tourist, you know, to pick a day like this and be able to walk the walls of Dubrovnik is just one of the great things to do. Main Street, Dubrovnik. It's called the Stradun, and that's where all the processions and all the feasts and the festival take place. It's also where all the tourists head down and most of the shops are. The thing that's really cool about it is that it looks like it's made of marble. It's so worn down by centuries of people walking on it that it shines. Now here's a candidate for Entrepreneur of the Year. It's already mid-afternoon, and this kid's been playing her heart out since early morning. One of the cool things about the old city is no cars. To get inside, you must pass through one of the city's gates, in this case, under the watchful eye of St. Blaise. This is the Church of St. Blaise, who is the patron saint of Dubrovnik, and he is seen up there actually cradling the city of Dubrovnik in his hand. Now, it's customary to go to church on St. Blaise's Day to get your throat blessed against illnesses or any disaster, like losing your voice, perhaps. Obviously, this guy's voice is in fine form, but I think I'd lose the hat, buddy. That is the world's first snooze alarm. It's the bell tower in Dubrovnik, and it chimes on the hour. It tells you what time it is. And then 3 minutes later, it chimes it all over again. Presumably, there were enough people who just rolled over in bed, so it was felt that they had to just repeat it a few minutes later to say, get up. By the way, take a close look at that clock. The time changes in 5-minute intervals. Now that's what I'd call civilized. I guess nobody here is in a big rush, which is not surprising when you consider this town was established in the 7th century. One of the oldest buildings is the Franciscan monastery, although much of it was destroyed in a massive earthquake in 1667. The cloisters were untouched. The pharmacy in the Franciscan monastery dates back to 1317. Excuse me? 1317. That's the 3rd oldest pharmacy in the world, and it's still functioning. In fact, this part is called the new pharmacy because it only started in 1901. The Franciscans, you know, were great with herbal remedies and tinctures and antidotes. Remember Friar Lawrence in Romeo and Juliet? He was the guy with the poison and the stuff that woke you up as well. Anyway, this has bottles of tincture and ancient remedies as well, but I think probably the #1 product they sell here is sunblock. There are numerous fabulous beaches all along the coast, and you can lie about in the water, you can lie about in the sand, or you can play volleyball. And if all that is too much for you, here's a fun game you can play in Dubrovnik if you've got a bit of time to kill. This is sloped, it's slippery, and if you manage to stand up and hold yourself against the wall, you get a wish come true or good luck or something like that. So, all right. I don't know how fast you need to go. Nope, hold on. I gotta do one more time. This is way hard. I just need a Velcro suit. I think it's easier for kids. I want a kid to try it. I did convince a number of passers-by to have a go at it, and while I watched them fail as miserably as I had, I realized if you're spending your vacation throwing yourself against a wall, it's probably time for a change of scenery. This is the world-famous Dalmatian coast, and it is, well, look for yourself. I'm on the island of Millet, an hour's ferry ride from Dubrovnik. And if these images look familiar, it's probably because you've seen them in travel brochures. And yes, the water really is that blue. Looks like just about perfect sailing down there, but that area is called St. Paul's Reef because the story is that St. Paul was shipwrecked out there on his way traveling from Greece to Rome and eventually made his way to Rome, but his impact here was felt. There's a lovely little chapel named after him, and in fact, still to this day, there are a good number of the inhabitants of this island who are named Paul or Paula. St. Paul was not the only wayward mariner in these parts. The legend is that Odysseus was shipwrecked on Millet and stayed for 7 years, which didn't make the wife too happy. Why did he stay so long? Apparently something about the charms of a certain nymph named Calypso. Or perhaps it was just the sheer beauty of this place. Millet has 2 inland saltwater lakes, and right in the middle of the bigger one is this beautiful old Benedictine monastery which was built in the 11th century. The Benedictines left in 1869. It was a hotel for a couple of decades during Tito's time, but is empty now. People are trying to figure out what to do with it. what the monks actually did. But I had a cousin who was a Benedictine monk at the northernmost monastery in the world in Scotland, and I visited him. They kept bees and they made honey. And the Greeks used to actually call this island honey, so maybe that's what they did. Maybe they kept bees and made honey and prayed. But I presume they came here to get away from it all for peace and quiet. Listen to those bugs. What is with those cicadas?
Okay, apart from the cicadas, the monastery here is, well, peaceful. One might even say serene, which is fine if you're a monk. For the rest of us, well, you gotta have a little fun. And Nielsen, the active holiday experts, are happy to oblige. This is like camp for big kids, and the boys and girls, who are mostly charming Brits, will teach you all you need to know about playing in the water.
Miette's turned into a water sport paradise, so I opted not for the windsurfing because I wanted to stay a little bit drier. But you can go kayaking and canoeing. But I took the dinghy lesson with Al. I can't imagine why.
Well, we've got on a nice large boat here. We've definitely stayed dry. Nice light winds.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful bit of sailing. Sailing along with our mainsail and our jib. It's very simple.
So my job is just holding on to the jib.
Yep,
this is tough.
Holding onto the jib sheet there, controlling our speed. Beautiful.
And it's really quite calm here. Is it just because this is a little sheltered cove, part of the Adriatic?
Yeah, we have a very sheltered sailing area here for our guests. We've got small islands all around. We've got Monkey Island behind us.
What about the spinnaker?
Okay, well, what we can do is we can bear away a little bit and hoist the spinnaker up.
So what do I do?
So if we ease ourselves away, you need to pull on that blue line there.
Yeah? Oh, no, it's coming back. Okay. Come on, you sucker. Go, go, go. Blow. Oh, that's nice. This is glorious. I'll be right back after this. Or maybe not.
At 47 kilometers in length, Korčula is one of the largest islands in the Adriatic. The reason I'm here is to see the town of Korčula, which is, by all accounts, a mini Dubrovnik.
This is the land gate into Korčula. There used to be a drawbridge and a moat here the Venetians put in. You can see their coat of arms on the tower. But everybody fought over this place. Turks, Genoese, Croats. You can understand why, because it's strategic and so gorgeous. The Korčulans were famous shipbuilders and stonemasons, and this is one of their masterpieces, the Cathedral of St. Mark. It took them 150 years to build it, although I think they got a guy named Bonino all the way from Milan, very famous stonemason, to carve the beautiful work around the door, the lions and St. Mark and that twisted scroll work. Most importantly, too, they put a clock tower there so they could tell the time, and the phases of the moon, because so many people here were fishermen. Want to see some brilliant town planning? The streets of Korčula are designed in a herringbone pattern, and the ones that face the west, where the lovely warm Mistral wind comes, are straight, so the wind can blow through. But the streets that face east are curved to keep out the cold wind they call the bora. This is 13th century air conditioning.
One man who was around back then, in fact locals claim he was born here, was none other than Marco Polo.
The story goes that Marco Polo spent 17 years in 13th century China as a close and personal friend of Kublai Khan. He ended up in a Genoese prison, told his adventures to his cellmate, who happened to be the Harold Robbins of his day, wrote it into the world's first travel book. which for 700 years was an essential guide to Mongol China, until modern researchers started wondering why Marco Polo had never mentioned the Great Wall or that the Chinese drink tea. Did he actually go there? Imagine a travel writer not telling the whole story. It would never happen here.
On that note, it is time to leave Korčula, back to the mainland and a visit to Ston. Now, what do you think this gentleman is doing? I'll give you a hint. There is nothing sweet about his job.
This was once one of the most precious commodities on earth. You talked about people being worth their salt. The word salary comes from salt. They have been harvesting salt here in Ston since Roman times, and they're still doing it. The sea comes in and evaporates, and they take it away. But this was so precious to them that they had to build a wall around it to protect it. And this is it. You've heard of the Great Wall of China, but you may not have heard of the pretty darn fabulous Wall of Ston, which is the second longest standing wall in the world. 5.5 kilometers long, built in 1333. A miracle of architecture and engineering. It's still standing after all these centuries, and it was bombed and hit by an earthquake within the last 10 years. It's pretty impressive from up here, but you needed something solid if you wanted to keep away the Huns and the Vandals and the Visigoths or the Venetians or the Ottomans or whoever was potentially going to threaten you. And just to make it tougher, they added 41 towers, 7 bastions, and 2 forts.
And a restaurant. Only kidding. The restaurant came much later.
Ston is also very famous for its seafood, and I'm sitting in the Corona restaurant with Antonia.
Hello.
Hello. In front of a plate of your most famous?
Yes, these are famous oysters, Croatian oysters. They're grown here in Maliston.
Maliston
Yes.
oysters,
Yes.
known around the world, Croatian
No,
oysters.
this is the famous, and you must try. It's the special oysters.
I don't like oysters.
Oh, it's very nice.
I like these oysters.
Yes.
How about local wine? I'd like
you
wine.
See here is Grk from island of Korčula and Plavac from Pelješac.
Plavac.
Yes.
Well, I've heard Grk I actually love because I'm never going to forget this. Next time I play Scrabble and I've got a bag full of consonants and no vowels, that's the word I'm going to surprise people with. But can I toast you with some Grk? How do you say it?
Živjeli.
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 Here.
Thank you.
Živjeli?
Živjeli.
With the Grk.
With Grk.
Živjeli.
Živjeli.
Thank you.
Well, it is indeed a marvelous night for a moon dance, but not tonight. Tomorrow, we'll have plenty of dancing. Take a needle and some thread, add in a dollop of patience, work for a long, long time, and voila, magic! Some of Croatia's most exquisite handicrafts can be found in Čilipi, just a short drive south of Dubrovnik.
Katita and her mother have a stand here in Čilipi selling some of the work. How long does it take you to make this?
No, maybe the whole winter.
Really?
Yeah. It's too much work on this one. First, you have to do all this around, and then you are working with the red, and then with the green, and then with the black, and at the end with the yellow. You are finished with the yellow, you know.
Like your mother taught you?
Yeah. If you want to stay with us, I'll try to teach you.
Try would be the word. There's no way. But thank you so much. So nice to meet you. Every Sunday morning, the people of Čilipi gather in the town square after Mass to do some dances and singing, which gives them a good reason to get together and keep these traditions alive. And it is swell for the tourists who get a chance to see this and buy some of their wares. And you've got to love the red shoes.
On the way back to Dubrovnik, a last chance to take in this beautiful haven. But there is one nagging fact that cannot be ignored. During the hideously ugly war that followed the breakup of Yugoslavia, Dubrovnik was under siege for 9 months in 91 and 92. 2,000 shells were fired at it. 68% of the buildings in the old town were hit. When it came time to try and repair the tiled roofs, they couldn't get an exact color match of the old honey-colored ones, which is why you see such a patchwork of color now. For the people of Dubrovnik, the memory of war still lingers, and will for some time. But the war is history. The tourists realize that. Already they're flocking, some returning, some first-timers, all hoping to avoid the inevitable rush. Postcards can be beautiful enough to actually inspire you to make a journey. It's why I'm here. But they are superficial, and therein lies an important lesson for the traveler. Yes, Dubrovnik is a wonder. The southern Dalmatian coast is serene and unspoiled and stunningly beautiful. But you must also make an attempt to understand Croatia's difficult history, particularly its most recent past, and what this brand new country hopes for the future. The postcard image is just the beginning. You have to go deeper, and it's worth it.